I'm here with Lori Deshane from tinybuddha.com, which is a site that is really about sharing old wisdom and making it relevant and kind of helping people integrate it into their lives in practical ways. Does that sum it up pretty accurately?
Right. Exactly. Applying wisdom to everyday life.
Yeah. And she's just written a book, which has the same kind of intention and the same way of supporting people. So one thing that I'm curious about is what inspires you to kind of go over this old material. I mean, most of the ideas and the wisdom that you're offering it's old wisdom. Mm-hmm. So what do you, I guess, why offer it again? Why repackage it?
Well, I really don't think that there is any new wisdom, to be honest. Mostly everything's been said. It's just recycled in new ways. And I think that the reason that we do recycle a lot of this wisdom over and over again is because it's helpful. It's practical, really. A lot of the ideas that show up on the site and also showed up in the book are just really basic suggestions sometimes for everyday mindfulness and connection and happiness. And they're the ideas that help us let go of the things that don't serve us and open up to joy. And actually in the book, there's really a combination of, first of all, tweets from the Tiny Buddha Twitter following. So what's interesting to note is that I asked my followers a number of questions that I determined to be the hardest questions in life. And as opposed to on the site, where the blog posts are really driven by these quotes from, sages through the ages, the book is driven by these responses to the questions that came from Twitter. And the responses did echo all this old wisdom. So these are the ideas that a lot of us are basing our lives on. A lot of us are living our lives around these ideas. People could have answered anything to these questions, and yet similar themes emerged. So I really do think that it's about taking our collective understanding off the page. That's what I want to do with the site, and that's what I tried to do with the book as well. Sort of explore these different ideas that a lot of us maybe know intellectually are smart to apply to our everyday lives, and yet knowing that we still sometimes struggle, I think, to actually live our lives in accordance with what we know to be wise.
Yeah. Well, one thing that, I just read your book yesterday, actually. One thing that I really appreciated about it is that the stories that you told to kind of represent the wisdom or, the idea that you were trying to convey, they weren't simple stories. They were complex, real things that you experienced that, I guess, showed how you learned it, what it meant in your life. And I think that your story is what is always going to be unique. That's what, we may be all speaking the same principles, but when you tell your story, that's something that only you can offer. And I think that your story is really inspiring.
Thank you.
One thing that I noticed in your story that I think is going to be really interesting to the One Question followers is that, on the One Question, we talk a lot about the value of having life purpose, and that purpose pulls you through the hard times. And you talk about some really hard times, like, living in this house where you had to pack up your belongings every day in order for them to not be stolen from you. And you also talk about that you didn't have meaning at that time in your life, that you didn't have a purpose. And yet, here you are, and you have fulfilling work, you have a life that is, meaningful to you now. And so it kind of puts that story into a context of meaning and purpose. And I guess what I'm wondering is, at that time you didn't have it, but now maybe you do have a sense of meaning and purpose. So what pulled you forward? If it wasn't already having that meaning, what was it that pulled you out of that space and into a new space?
Well, I think that it's interesting because at the time, and like you mentioned, my stories are somewhat complex, and that's actually the tagline for my site, Simple Wisdom for Complex Lives. But at the time, I did feel as though I don't have any sense of meaning. And I was really going through a dark time in terms of, moving beyond some deep depression from my younger years and also learning to first stop hating myself, then like myself, and then learn to love myself. So I did feel sort of lost in the world, and I felt like I didn't have a sense of direction, and I didn't feel like I had any value to provide to anybody. And I think that's common to feel that way when you just don't see anything good in yourself. If you don't think you have a light to share with the world, you're not going to have any idea how to shine it because you don't believe it's there. But in retrospect, when I look back, it's not that I didn't have a purpose, because I did have a purpose, and my purpose was to heal. I think that we often think of our purpose as what we're going to give back to the world, and that's a good way to look at it, because I think that gives us a driving motivation to keep going, because it's not just about ourselves. It's about how we fit in the grand scheme of things and what we can do to make a difference in other people's lives. But even at points when we don't necessarily have a strong professional purpose or a strong sense of meaning in terms of maybe how we fit in the big picture, we do have a purpose in every given moment. That purpose might be to let go of pain, or to be good to yourself, or every moment has its meaning in the context of our lives. So I think that's what helped me really when I was at the darkest time in my life. I remember I read a quote. It was, life is 10% what happens to you and 90% how you respond to it. And that was very empowering to me, because all of a sudden I looked around at my circumstances, which I felt really ashamed of. I'd gotten to a point where I felt, I don't know if I could have felt any worse about who I was and what I had created for myself. But I thought, okay, well, I can look around at this and think, okay, this is my life. Or I can decide that my life is how I deal with this, and how I empower myself to do my best with what I have and to keep improving a little every day. So that really was my purpose in that moment. It wasn't something grand and something that maybe other people could benefit from on a daily basis, but my purpose was to get strong a little day by day. And, the purpose evolves, and it will continue, like all of us. For me personally, I think that we all kind of can have an evolving sense of purpose. So we never have to feel like this is what I'm meant to do. This is kind of taking it day by day and seeing what comes up and seeing how we change and evolve and letting our purpose change and evolve with that.
That's awesome. You touched on something that you also touched on in the book in the chapter about happiness, where you talk about responsibility and taking ownership of your happiness, being responsible for your own happiness. And I'm wondering if you have any light to shed on how to distinguish when it's time to cut and bail, or when it's time to change your perspective. Does that? I don't know if I need to elaborate. Like, when is it time to say, no, it's the guy, it's the job, it's the city, it's the house? When is it time to say it's my attitude?
So when is it time to recognize you have to make a change, either externally or internally? I don't know that I have a clear answer for that. I think it all comes down to self-awareness, really. I think that's part of what I wanted to explore with my book, is that I think it's very tempting to look for concrete answers. I know that I have in the past. It's a scary thing to take responsibility for your choices. Because if you accept that your choices create your experience of the world, then that truly means that if you're not happy with the way you're being or the world you're part of, a lot of it's in your own hands. And it's a lot easier to assume that there's something external that you don't have to do anything about, because then you can kind of place blame on it and not take the proactive choices that you need to take. So I guess my point here is that we all need to be able to find a sense of stillness and silence amid the, sometimes chaotic world that goes on around us, the relationships, the jobs, the complexities. And we have to be able to look inside and recognize what isn't aligning with my values, what doesn't make me feel good about myself. What part of this world that I'm, allowing to continue as it is, what part of it doesn't work for me? And I really do think we have to be able to tune into our own instincts. But I guess touching upon what I was saying before, formerly in the past, I was always looking for that answer outside myself. And I mentioned towards the end of my book that I was a psychic junkie. I chronically called psychics. What should I do? Should I leave this relationship? Should I quit this job? Should I move back home? I always wanted the answer as to what's the right thing to do to feel better about myself and my life, because it was scary to consider that maybe there was no concrete answer, and I just had to keep following my gut instincts, take the leaps, know that nothing is guaranteed or certain, that just because you end the relationship, that doesn't mean everything's going to be perfect. Just because you quit the job, it doesn't mean you're going to be totally fulfilled. Everything comes with it, a little bit of a risk and uncertainty. And I think really we need to just be able to be in touch with what feels right to us, and then trust that, things might not happen like we'd want them to. It might not end up feeling like that was the ultimate answer, but we can take whatever comes our way and make something good of it. If we're willing to just stay in touch with our instincts, embrace the uncertainty and walk into it.
Awesome. Well, one of the really great things I think about your book is how much you do share about yourself. And I think one of the great things about your blog is your humility. I mean, you're guiding people on really big choices in their life and really big questions and big problems. And it seems that you approach everything with such humility and openness and just authentic inquiry, I guess. And I'm wondering, is there anything that you're struggling with now, like any of these wisdoms is there anyone that's like that you're really struggling to integrate into your own life right now?
I think the biggest challenge for me recently has been I've had some questions around where I'm going next professionally. What's the right choices to make with Tiny Buddha? In the book, I do write about the section of, you need money to be happy. And I'm someone who, I know that I'm happiest when I'm able to just embrace simplicity. You know what I mean? I don't like being incredibly busy. I like to have time to just be. And then on the other hand, I did write a book. I have a site that's growing, and I have a lot of people emailing me with things opportunities for me and things I can do for the site and partnerships and whatnot. And I do have a sense of, I don't necessarily, like I was saying before, it's tempting to want to know the right answer. I'm questioning what's the right thing to do. Where do I want to go personally, professionally? Where do I want to take this? Which partnerships do I want to be part of? Do I want to just keep things simple and just write my blog posts and then run around outside? So I think I've been questioning a little bit about what I want to do next, and where I want to take this, and what I can create for the community. That feels like that's the most of what I've been not really struggling with. This isn't keeping me up at night stressing out or anything, but it's certainly on my mind. I don't really know what my next steps are. So that's something that's been a recent challenge for me.
Well, I think it's really it's beautiful for you to share that, because like what you just said about getting your circumstances, there's always going to be something else that you're dealing with, or some other obstacle or struggle or questions. There's always going to be something else, even when you are at the point where you think right now is the end all be all. Over there is where success is. Over there is where I'm going to be happy and everything's going to be perfect. When you're there, there's going to be a whole other list. And I think it's really great for people to see that, and it may be helpful. It's helpful for me even to hear that and think about being present.
Well, it's funny because I think that we kind of adapt to our circumstances, So at one point it was, I'd love to write a book someday, and it seems like something so like big and in the future. And then I'd catch myself, okay, I wrote a book. And then, the other day my boyfriend said to me, really take it in and feel happy and proud about this. You know what I mean? And I had to stop and realize, okay, how many moments have I taken to just say, wow, I did this, to just enjoy it, as opposed to thinking, well, what's next? What am I going to do next? Where should I go next? It's very tempting, to think about what's next. And if I'm not conscious and mindful, maybe to worry about what's next. So that's something that I'm I think that we're all human, and there are certain instincts that we're always going to have to kind of rein ourselves in and take a deep breath and just appreciate now.
Awesome. Well, is there anything else that you want to share or say to the one question readers who are looking for their life purpose, maybe looking for their next step in life?
Well, I will say, in terms of the looking, one thing that has helped me a lot is to focus more on creating than looking, I think, because I know that, for most of my life, I've looked outside myself for everything, for the answers, for, a sense of purpose, for everything really that I've learned I need to be able to create inside myself. And that's certainly not an easy thing. It's not something that you could just, okay, well, I'm going to switch the light switch and now I don't look anywhere external. But I do think that some of the most satisfying things in life come from the decision to just take a deep breath and really choose who we're being in this moment. I think the externals are always going to change, the circumstances and the jobs might change, the relationships might change, the world kind of, I think of it like a time-lapse video showing things changing around you, if you were to step back and look at just how much actually changes in our circumstances. But it's really an amazing thing that we always have the potential to take a deep breath, think about what really matters to us right in this moment. Maybe it's family, maybe it's spending time in nature, maybe it's your pets. It's easy to lose touch with those things that really matter. And I think that that's where our purpose comes in, when we honor the things that we truly value in this world through our moment-to-moment choices. So it doesn't have to be, purpose can be something grand, and we can all do big things in this world. But I think sometimes the most fulfilling moments come from the tiny choices. So I guess that's what I would leave as a final thought.
All right, thank you so much, Lori. And one thing that I want to add is, for all you one questioners, if you buy the book, pay particular attention to the chapter on fate. I feel like this chapter was really written for you. So buy the book. It's wonderful. I highly recommend it. And thank you so much, Lori, for joining and speaking to us about wisdom.
Thank you so much.